Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Modern Chat for DevOps Teams. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Amanda Venezia, Digital Marketing Manager at Mattermost, and I'll be your moderator. Before we get started, I'd like to cover some quick housekeeping items. Today's webinar will last approximately 30 minutes with about 10 to 15 minutes left at the end of the presentation to answer all of your questions. We truly want to hear from you and have this session be as interactive as possible, so please add your questions to the question box and use the voting feature throughout the webinar. If there are any questions we aren't able to address today, we will follow up with you once the webinar has concluded. A recorded version of this webinar and slides will be made available and also emailed to you following the presentation. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our speaker, Christian Johansson, Solution Architect at Mattermost, joining us all the way from Berlin. Welcome, Christian.
Thanks, Amanda. Welcome, everybody. As Amanda said, I'm a solution architect at Mattermost, so I'm a kind of a technical guy supporting our customers, especially enterprise customers. So I have some insights in DevOps, in the DevOps arena, in the DevOps also because of my history. You can reach out to me directly on email or using Twitter, and this should be it in terms of introducing myself. And the first thing I want to start with, and to be honest, today's session is a kind of mixture between an interactive session. So I had a demo environment set up on AWS hosted, which we will use to go through different use cases. And one of the things I wanted to start with is the universal problem for DevOps. And because I'm in the space for quite a long time now, I see some of these things happen all the time. And there's, like, you can see it in the slide, it covers most of the problems I face in my career, which means, like, we have siloed workflows and communications. Everybody knows that, right? There's kind of an office chat. So you can talk to the whole company and you can have video chat or something. But if you want to talk to your Jenkins pipeline, this might be difficult because let's go for Skype, for example, there's no integration. It's kind of like you always have these silos. And this is not only a technical problem, sometimes it's an organizational one as well. So kind of like for us, DevOps is also the challenge of collaborating together and not keeping the development out of the operations and the other way around. So we see a lot of problems or issues with this or saw this in the past, and we try to address some of them. So you will hear a lot about security if you check out Mattermost. You will hear a lot about configurations and plugins and bots, and some things relate to the solution in terms of the kind of how Mattermost is installed. As I mentioned, we look into an AWS environment today, but the real value of Mattermost is that it's on-premise. So you have the freedom of choice where you want to run it, even if it's Docker or Kubernetes or your AWS or Azure cloud. So you're free to decide where you want to run it. And the good thing is you own the data. So you own the database, which means it's completely different to some of these services. You own the data, you own the application, which means you are the trusted advisor to your clients internally, which is fun. And the other thing I see a lot, and this is kind of the use cases we look into today, is the amount of messages we receive if we introduce DevOps into a company. So I work for different real big banks in the world, and every time they introduce it, they got hundreds of emails. So the pipeline reports back, the repository changes, every commit, like everything creates a message. And one of the things I see at Mattermost is that we call chat ops. So we integrate the systems into the kind of speaking to each other. So like I would reach out to one of my fellows here at Mattermost, I would reach out to my Jenkins server or my GitHub repo as well. And as I said, today is a bit about these, and we will have a look into 3 different use cases, and I hope you like them because it's kind of standards in the DevOps space we used before. And let me give you a quick feedback or a quick heads up on Mattermost. So if you haven't heard of us before, we're quite successful in terms of downloads. So you can see that we have over 10,000 unique downloads a month. We have a really, really great community, and this is kind of a driver for DevOps as well. So we release in a DevOps pipeline every month. So all the things you see is kind of the stuff we use on a daily basis, which is like we eat our own dog food, I would call that. So we support up to 16 languages, and this is also a big community effort. So people help us to translate into different languages. And as Amanda mentioned, I'm based in Berlin, so I really like to have a German client because it's much easier for me to understand. But beside that, we also support up to 55 languages in terms of programming languages. And I have a few examples we can just highlight and jump into this so you can see that the markdown kind of messages we support make a big difference to other systems in that space. And the other thing, the last point in this list is the one I've already mentioned. So you decide where you want to run it. So if you just want to have one Docker container because you just have 10 developers, or if you want to go up to 20,000 and you have a Kubernetes environment and use our Helm charts or the upcoming operator, that's it. That's the way to go. In terms of the use cases, I want to have this built up as we go through the use case. I describe the intention and the story behind it, and then we go from there and jump into a live environment that shows exactly what I described before. So in the DevOps use case number 1, which you hopefully will see in a second, is it's all about increased efficiency. So in terms of JIRA integration, we talk about a support ticket which comes into is raised in Mattermost. So it's kind of a tool that talks to Mattermost to create a support alert. You all know that, like Zendesk or Nagios, or some kind of alarm or support ticket that is raised, and this will be shown in Mattermost, and then it's something we can discuss. So it's kind of a chat-ups feature, so people can start discussing that without being in the system. So you don't have to enter Zendesk, for example, to discuss with other colleagues or fellows in the company. Then we create a JIRA ticket because it seems like a software bug. So directly in Mattermost, and this is kind of cool because normally I had this conversations a few times with my coworkers in the development space. They're like, "All right, Christian, you're right. This sounds like a software bug. Please go in JIRA and create a support, create an issue or a feature request for your customers." He was like, "Okay, now I have to jump into another system, have to find my login if it's like not with single sign-on. So I have to move out of my system where I'm used to work in, and then I have to jump into another one." So in this case, we create a JIRA ticket because it's a software bug. The bug is created and tracked without leaving Mattermost, and then the development channel shows updates if there are changes, because it's kind of a role feature as well. So we have different channels for different purpose. And I use a thing called Opsgenie, which is kind of a cool like alarm management. So I can easily create an alarm, and then I can track that down in JIRA. And I just jump on my screen share. So let me give you access to my screen. Takes a moment. And there we go. So you all should see a Mattermost instance, which is hosted on AWS. It might take some time. I realize that there's some delay in between changing the slides and jumping into another environment. The environment you will see is the AWS hosted one. So I set up different things, and it's just like a one-time thing. So please ignore any license messages or whatever shows up, because it's just like, I just built this for today, which is also easy because you can just use CloudFormation, Terraform, or nice configuration languages like Ansible to just build this and spin it up. You can see that this is the thing we call town square, which is the entry point. You can see that I wrote some helpful feedbacks in this. And there's one thing down the page, which is a link preview to something called integrations.mattermost.com. So all the things I demoed today are posted there. So you can easily find the integrations you might be interested in. And in our case, I said we talk about Opsgenie and support cases. So I just go into this tool and create another alert. And because I connected it to our demo, I can just say, hey, this is a DB issue, missing a field or something. And this might be related to a code issue. So I give this a high priority because I think that's a good one to report. So let's see if the screen changes. There you go, Opsgenie. This, by the way, is a public service. I mean, you can, because it's on-premise, you can connect any system. So it's kind of depends on your environment and where you wanna host it. And this creates a support issue. So going back to the support channel, you will see that there's a Opsgenie bot actually with my name because I'm logged into Opsgenie, which is kind of weird because normally you would just use a bot name, but in this case I was logged in, so don't care about this too much. So it just creates another issue message or a new alert in Mattermost, and this new alert says DB issue missing a field. And then I can go ahead and start discussing this. I can call my friend Steve saying, hey, looks serious. Looks like a bug. Okay, I filed this, so I can go ahead. And the thing is, because I have this JIRA plugin installed, I can just now create a JIRA issue based on the specific line. So I can go there, say, hey, this is create an issue. This issue type is task because I just configured a simple JIRA instance. I said the summary is a DB issue. And I see there's a kind of delay, so I wait just a second so you guys have the fully featured front end, which is quite nice because as you see, I just click create JIRA issue, go into a pop-up menu that opens for me, and then I can enter some text. And go ahead and create it. And as soon as I created this one, it gives me a link to the JIRA issue I've created. So I can just copy this one and say, hey, this is create a permalink, for example. So I can copy this link and send it to someone. I can also just highlight the link and copy it. But the other thing that happens is in my development channel, there's a new message. And as soon as the create is done in the screen, you will notice that there is a one and a bold development channel. So it's kind of, I as a user created a JIRA issue because I figured this out, and but I'm related to support, so I'm the guy in the support team. And now that I created the JIRA issue, this is kind of interesting for the development team. So these guys might see this. And because the JIRA plugin talks to the development channel in my case, it gives me an idea of what happened. So Christian Johansson, which was the guy I was before in support, created a DB issue task. So it's kind of all the messages I sent to this. It refers back to the original message. So you can see that it's going back to my Mattermost instance. And what happens is I can click this issue and I jump back into, or jump into JIRA. In this case, because I'm entitled to use JIRA, I can just say, hey, I start progress. So I work on this one because I think I can solve it. In this case, it's a bit weird because I'm the assigned one and the reporter. So this is the development channel. This is the original message that was used. So it always refers back to the thing we discussed in support. So even someone who's not related to this issue can jump back to this conversation. Then I jump into JIRA, and as you can see, I start working on this, so it gets assigned to me. And the good thing is, you might notice that there is a 2 on top of the Mattermost tab now, which means there's another message in the development channel. So you can see as soon as someone starts using this, it also gives feedback to the development channel, because it's kind of the development guys see that someone grabbed it, and still they can talk about this, right? You can still do a reply saying, hey, this was nice. Thanks, Steve, heads up. So this will show in a minute. So there you see, that's the second message, and then I can reply on this one and can still talk about the issue without moving into the system. That means also that the development guys can talk about something without moving out of Mattermost. There you go. I mentioned my friend because he was involved into the discussion, so he might be interested in this as well if he's part of the channel. If he's not part, I can just give him access to it. I hope this makes sense. This was kind of the first use case I wanted to cover today. So I close these instances, go back to Town Square, and go back to the slides. So as you can see, if the screen changes, because there's still a delay, as soon as we move back to the slides, you will see that we did what I proposed to do. It was the support raised the ticket, JIRA ticket was created because it's a software bug. In this case, it was a V issue. The bug is created without leaving Mattermost, and the development channel shows all the updates if something changes. So now it's time to go to use case 2. And use case 2 is kind of a different one. So it's still a plugin, but it has not the same kind of feature set we saw with the JIRA plugin. And this is to give you an idea of the different layers. So we have webhooks, we have plugins, we have bots. Like there's a bright variety of options. So you can easily decide on which one you want to use. And the other thing is, most of them are open source. I would say all of them are open source, by the way. So you can easily clone them, fork them, and change them to the things you want to see. And talking about the GitHub one, everything you will see is similar to the Bitbucket one. So in this case, we go through the Git repository management. We use the GitHub plugin, and we check it out. So it gives us an actual status of the repository that's linked to it. In this case, it's mine, and it's a small script I wrote. We add another pull request directly on the website, so directly in GitHub, because I think it's much easier than just toning it on the command line, so that I don't have to switch windows. And the GitHub plugin reports the new pull request, and even it disappears as soon as I do something. So in this case, as an integration, we just use the GitHub plugin, and I just jump back on the screen share. So we go back into our environment. And there are two things you might notice when the screen switches. And there's one, there is an enhancement of the front end. So below the burger menu, which says demo team and Christian, there is the GitHub plugin. So it shows the symbol of the GitHub. I think it's a cat. Then you have the open pull requests. You have the merges and commits, or you have unread messages. And there's a refresh button as well. So you can easily refresh this if in case you missed a message or something. And the other thing which is different to the JIRA one is there is a bot account that says GitHub, and this is bold and has a 1 on it because I did something. So, or someone else did something. So in this case, it's kind of a history what happened to my repos. So because I linked my account, which is easy because you can do something like /GitHub, so it's also a / command, /GitHub connect, and then you can connect it to your account. Or if the plugin is installed, you just click the logo, and then you can connect it to your repositories. And the good thing is you can see that I did some stuff, and here's the settings, which is the help menu. So most of our /comments have these kind of help menus, and we will see another one if we talk about the third use case. So in this case, we see that I did some stuff in the past, and I just jump on the AD import repository, and I add another thing there. So I go into my repo, and I don't want to destroy anything, so I just give it a new file. Let's do Markdown. Give it a new file, and then I create a new branch because I want to merge this to master at some point. So you will see that in a second. So as you can see, I click the link, jump into my repo, and I just clicked an old message. So I create a new file, and then I just add a headline, and I want to create a pull request as well. And why all this happens, you can see at some point there will be messages in the GitHub tab of Mattermost. And normally if you activate these, there are desktop notifications, mobile notifications, any kind of like, I want to be informed about this. So this pops up at your screen. You can't see this right now because it's just limited to my browser in this case. So yeah, as you can see, I create the pull request, and then I jump back into the Mattermost environment. And then you will notice that there is a feedback in the channel, in the bot, sorry about that. So in my direct message GitHub bot that says, hey, there's a new pull request which was created, and there was another branch that was created by Christian, in this case because I'm the one who's talking about this. And as you can see, you can now refresh the pull requests that are open. Like you refresh the GitHub plugin, and then you can jump back on the 3 because it changes. And then you can see which kind of open pull requests you have a deeper look, and then you might merge it because I'm the owner of that one, and it's just a test case. I just merge it, which leads to another message then in the GitHub board. It becomes green, so you can see every time it's getting active, it becomes green like a normal user. This is kind of a bot user, so it becomes active while you're doing things. And then I just jump on this one, and as you can see, there's some more. I ignored them because they're quite old. Merge the pull request. And going back to Mattermost, you might notice that there's a 1 and a star, which means there's a new message. And then we go back, and you can see that the create test MD was merged. And you can also see that if I refresh the plugin, it will go down to 2 again. So this is kind of a different integration. So you can find that one on integrations.mattermost.com as well. And that means it was not as interactive with the pop-up menus, but it still gives you a front-end enhancement and the possibility of having these messages as a bot displayed. And every time you can see that here, every day when you log in, or if you like after a sleeping time reconnect to Mattermost, it gives you this report. So you can see these things you have to do, like, hey, this is my daily task list I have to care about. And this is kind of really easy to follow up with things. And talking about GitHub and the code Markdown we saw, I think I mentioned that we support Markdown out of the box. And this is really because it's really beautiful because you can just use up to 55, I think, languages right now to post code in Mattermost. And that makes it really nice because you can just add the kind of code you're posting, like Go, JSON, Java, or even Bash or LaTeX. You can just add this, and then you have some code examples on the left side that show you what's possible. And even the last one is formatted. So if I go and do an edit, you will see how that looks like. It's just like adding the name of the code, and then you can easily have the complex code displayed here as well. So really nice, Java's, Mathematics, and Bash. Bash is nice for me because I do a lot of stuff on the command line. I really appreciate it if someone formats code for me because it's much easier for me to understand and have the right intent and all that stuff. So I hope this gives you a good impression of the GitHub plugin and the workflow. So it's kind of similar to the Bitbucket one if you're an Atlassian user. So that makes it really nice. And yeah, I use that from time to time because I'm not an active developer right now, but I can see that most of the guys I work with using this. So this was DevOps use case 2, and because of the delay, I jumped directly to the next use case, and I appreciate any questions afterwards. So the last one I want to show you today is the Jenkins Pipeline integration. So we covered the repository system, we covered JIRA as an issue and bug tracker, and we also have Jenkins, which a lot of people still use. And you can see that the description of this use case is quite easy. So the Jenkins server has some builds available. We check for them, like we figure out which builds they have, the server has, and then we try to execute one of them. And then we get the feedback also in the developers channel if the build is completed, which is a combination of a plugin and a webhook. So I just added a webhook crawl in my Jenkins workflow, which just reports back to a channel I created the webhook for. That was easy in terms of slides. So I go back to the environment, and you might notice before that there is a Jenkins channel. As you can see, all the instances, like the JIRA server, the Jenkins servers, are just like the standard ones you can roll out anywhere. So it's just connected using the URL. And in this case, I mean, I can just show you how the Jenkins server looks like. It takes some time because I think there's a huge delay in the meantime on the slides. But I mean, most of you might know how Jenkins looks like, so I jump directly into the system. And what I use now is, because there's no bot and there's no other way, I just use the / comment. So I get the help like the help comments, but because I was just like using Jenkins, and then I can use, because I know no Jenkins list. And this gives me exactly what you see now. So you have like the 3 builds, you see another build, Mattermost, and multi-branch. And the interesting one is the Mattermost build, but I created another 2 because I wanted to have at least a few of them showing up. And then you can see as soon as I enter Jenkins, it gives me a kind of help. So it shows that I can use Jenkins list and Jenkins build. And when I do a Jenkins list, it gives me the actual list of all the available jobs and folders. And if I do a Jenkins build on Mattermost build, it should kick off the job. So it takes some time for the screen, but it takes off the job. And the expectation was, depending on the slides, that the message will be shown in development as well. So development becomes bold, and then it should give me another feedback on the job. So there is the Jenkins build for the Mattermost build job, which is like a really fast one, because it doesn't really do anything. And by the way, when we look at this, you see that the Jenkins board has a logo of Jenkins. The Opsgenie had the Opsgenie one. So you can override these. So you can name the boards. You can give them nice pictures, so everybody can identify them really fast and knows what it is. And talking about the Jenkins build, this is kind of a developer's task. So this goes back into the development channel as soon as it is successful or unsuccessful. So in this case, it gives me back the internal name of the branch or of the build. So there's something called environment variables, which are part of the Jenkins job. So you can easily address them, put them into a webhook, and this gives you a feedback into the development channel. And you might check other plugins as well, because we have such a great community. There's so many people developing things because they might want to have more information. They might want to format this as a table or something. So there's so many options. And because we use JSON and Markdown a lot, it's really easy to format these messages to have them look like the JIRA board or more like a one-liner, or even if you want to use Markdown formatted code, that's nice too. So if you have kind of, this is the build and it should have a highlight or something, then it goes back into this channel as well. So that was an easy one. So you've seen different stages and different options of plugins. So that was the use case 3. So we created, we linked to, we asked a Jenkins server if he has builds available. We checked them and executed one of them, and we got the feedback into a different channel because still someone might be responsible for the Jenkins workflow and someone else might be in the developers channel, like paying attention on the builds. Yeah, that's the summary.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you, Christian. Would you like to go into some questions?
Yes, sure.
Perfect. All right. The first question we have, how would you go about comments added in JIRA? Will they be mirrored in Mattermost too?
So you can decide on what should be posted. So right now, the state of the plugin is 2.0 beta, which is kind of, I just brought that up, the freshest stuff to you guys. So yes, you can decide on what should be posted. And there will be some more functionality without like saying too much. I've seen in another demo. So yeah, we still develop on these plugins as well. And I'm really happy that we own this one, because you will notice that we ship it together with Mattermost, which makes it really easy to use it. And even if it's not the case or you need something, you can always ask for a feature request, because as I said, they're open source. So you will find them in our GitHub repo, and you can just easily check this out, or adding another issue if you don't like it, because it's still like, even the documentation is not updated right now. So it's kind of like mixed feelings here. So I think we can, but I'm not 100% sure. So you should check out the repo.
Great. Our next question is, we are using Slack. Why is Mattermost better for DevOps teams?
Okay. I used it in the past. And the thing I noticed is, if I have a proprietary system, or if I have a system that is not allowed to talk to the internet, like my Active Directory, like my Jenkins server inside my innovation or R&D department, it becomes really challenging to talk to security or compliance teams to open them to the world, because it's kind of like, this is my intellectual property as a company, so I want to keep this. And the other thing is, like, because it's open source, you can see so much you can change. So we have different solutions we learn from our customers, where they might add custom headers to the mobile app to authenticate their client device. And this is kind of cool. I really, from a user standpoint, it's the same thing. The API is compatible. You can still use the stuff. We have a Slack importer, so you own. That's the point when you own your data. Like, now you own it, and you can connect your different systems to it, like Elastic or something. So it's really, from my perspective, I think you can hear that I'm really pumped about Mattermost and the options you have here. I'm not saying that the thing is a bad product, but in terms of you're in charge of how to how reliable the system is, and you might notice a public service goes down from time to time. This is kind of, you still can keep that in your MPLS VPN, so people are still able to connect over the continent, but you own it and you can build it high available. So it's, yeah, a lot of kind of technical features I know, but for me, it's a big difference.
Great. Next question is, how do you integrate with non-standard solutions?
Okay, that depends a bit on what the non-standard solution is, but since we are open source, you can see all the connections. So you can see WebSockets, you can see the REST API, you can see also our command line tool. As I mentioned, the config.json file from the mobile app, for example, so you can compile your own mobile app. You can override the web app with these plugins. So it's really, look at the thing or the application you want to connect to Mattermost. And for me, as a solution architect, it's all about solutions. So it's software, right? So there's always a way. And if not, it might be so like blocked and closed that it might not make sense to connect it to any system. But since we have all these kind of brokers like WebSockets, like API, CLI, and even front-end JavaScript override, so you can use nearly everything to connect any tool, even if they don't have a standard REST API or something.
Perfect. Next question is, I want to build my own plugin like the Jenkins one. How can I start?
Okay, that's good. If you want to do that, there is a webpage called developers.mattermost.com. So this gives you a good idea of how to start with that. And there's also api.mattermost.com. So we have different domains that give you all the different flavors of integrations. And you can just fork or clone the Jenkins one, and then you can copy the code or change it to your needs. I, for example, have a customer who uses our auto-translate plugin, but they have their own auto-translate API, which is different to the AWS one we use. And they just forked the plugin, changed it, and now they use it internally because they are not allowed to use it in public service. So it's really easy, developers.mattermost.com, or just fork the GitHub repo of the plugins and feel free to change it.
Perfect. Next question is, you mentioned different kinds of integrations. What's the story here?
Oh, so yeah, you saw a few of them. I'm talking about the data you need in Mattermost. So sometimes it's just enough to create the lowest level, which is an incoming or outgoing webhook. So just sending data to Mattermost or receiving data from Mattermost into another system. So webhook is kind of a standard. Then you saw with the Jenkins one, the / command, which can reach out to another service and post data to it. So like I call the Jenkins and I have a web server connected to this. It grabs the posting header and it talks to Jenkins and achieves the task I want to do. So we have webhooks, we have / comments, and then you saw the plugins, which are more fully featured ones, which refers to the GitHub one, which is kind of a bot. And then we have the JIRA one, which is a full-blown pop-up front-end experience. I call that a Ferrari because it's kind of, it looks nice and it's fast. So it's kind of all the levels. So webhooks, / comments, bots, and plugins.
Great. The last question that I'm seeing come in is, where can I find more information around plugins and development, which I think is what you just spoke to.
Yes. So go ahead and go check out developers.mattermost.com, and there are 3 points, and you can decide, even if you want to commit code to Mattermost and make it better and help us, that's also something we really like. So it's kind of the starting point. And the other thing, if you're more interested in how to use Mattermost, administrate Mattermost, I call it the source of truth because it's the one we own, and that's docs.mattermost.com.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, well, that is it for questions. So thank you, Christian, for the great webinar today, and thank you all for tuning in. As a reminder, a recorded version of this webinar and the accompanying slide deck will be emailed to you shortly, and they'll also be available on demand on the BrightTalk platform. Be sure to follow us at Mattermost on Twitter. We look forward to talking to you soon. Bye.
Bye.